Every year, millions of shoppers flood online stores hunting for the best deals. And while consumers see all the chaos of discounts and countdown timers, what they usually don't see is the immense engineering effort behind it. The wait, the hours of preparation, and also the technology that makes it all seamless. My name is Michelle. I'm a solutions architect at AWS, and today I'm joined by my co-speaker, Daniel from OTTO, who is heading the technical part of the OTTO online shop. But let's start this off with a look at what Black Friday means for the retail space. It was estimated that there was around 5.9 billion euros spent in Germany alone on the last Black Friday. Also, almost 1/3 of Germans was likely to buy something. So what does this increased consumer spending for this day mean for retailers like you? Especially looking at e-commerce, what we see is that IT organization and IT infrastructure are pivotal in processing all of these orders without failure. And one of the questions here is, how can AWS help you to deal with that? So let's start with the most obvious one, the elasticity of the AWS cloud. The most obvious point is probably scaling your workload to customer demand. With AWS, you are able to ensure the availability of your online shop when you need it most. On Black Friday, when most shoppers are there and want to shop on your website. Utilizing the AWS cloud, you have access to many data centers that help you scale these workloads and thus give you the availability and stability that you need. But also, in business, it's not only about what ability your e-commerce shop can have, right? It's also about the cost behind it. So with AWS, you only pay for what you use. You might ask yourself, how does this now translate into cost savings? Well, if you have Black Friday, you might have double or even triple the traffic than on a usual day. So if you want to do this on premises or in your own data centers, you need to also provision and pay for this peak capacity at all times. With the AWS cloud, you are able to only pay for the peak capacity when you actually need it. But also, a point that might not be as obvious is the agility and the ability of teams to experiment fast and also innovate. With AWS services, you are able to start and stop using them at any time, meaning that experimentation with novel technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, can be simply started without any heavy investment in hardware. This means you can innovate faster, you can react faster, but you can also innovate more and focus on your business. Because with AWS services, we have many services that are able to help you abstract the managing of servers and the heavy lifting and focus on really what makes your business different. Lastly, how can AWS help you here is the global footprint. If you want to expand globally and you want to serve customers anywhere, we have an extensive, reliable, and secure cloud infrastructure to do so. So to summarize on this question, how does AWS help to deal with Black Friday? Of course, we scale up to what you need. We have the elasticity and also the cost savings around that. Then innovation and agility with using AWS services. And lastly, serving customers anywhere. But the real question is, what does this look like in practice? For OTTO, for example, Black Friday is not just any day, but it really is the ultimate test on resilience, scalability, and trust. What happens when you put millions of orders towards an e-commerce platform? And for that, I would like to give it over to Daniel.
Right. Thank you, Michelle. So to start off, as Michelle started with some numbers, I'll do the same. What does Black Friday look like for OTTO, or what does success look like for us at Black Friday? Year over year, this year we managed to increase the number of orders during the Black Friday phase by 18%. We're not publishing numbers for the individual Black Friday, but this is the whole 2 weeks around Black Friday, the whole Black Friday phase. During that time, this year, we managed to process around 4.5 million orders with a total volume of around 700 million. And that, what Michelle referred to as well, is not achieved on a single day, but you have varying load patterns over the whole phase. And that was the second, and that is what the second number is supposed to tell you. We had actually on a Black Friday compared to a regular Friday, we see 4 times the load, and at peak that means we get around 4,000 page impressions and 40 orders per second into our shop. And when Michelle speaks about the elasticity of the cloud, right, this is exactly what it delivers for us. A question I get quite often is, well, how do you prepare for it, and especially when does your prep work start? And while that is a quite valid question for many parts of the business, like you need to order products well in advance, you need to book airtime for advertising. For technology, that question isn't quite sufficient or quite the right one. So I like to turn that around into a question like, how much lead time can your business actually afford? And for Black Friday, that's pretty much relaxed, really, because we only see it once a year. So your lead time is really 364 days. But there are other events during the year where that shrinks down. For example, when you have a large marketing event like a PlayStation launch, you get a lead time of measured in days only, and you get very different load patterns if customers are looking for specific products on your website, and only those products, and they only want to purchase, not to look around. And in the extreme, this lead time shrinks down to almost nothing if there are events that just hit you and you have no control over, like a denial of service attack. And as a fun fact, we did have several of those during the Black Friday phase at peak times. So how do you deal with it? How do you build something that can react that quickly? And a lot of the time, the question or the answer that gets thrown back at us, right, you need to be more agile, or this used to be the number one for many years and it's slowly getting replaced by this one, you just use Gen AI. And while these are all true, and I really don't want to ridicule them, the important thing is that you build an environment, you build a landing zone that enables you to work with those concepts. And that's, for me, what it comes down to. And in my experience, what I've seen over the past years, there are really 4 key factors for success. And unfortunately, they're all of the hard work and a lot of effort type. The first one of those for me is mindset, and specifically about thinking about in a product way as opposed to a project way. What do I mean by this? In a project, you're dealing with requirements that are handed down to you by stakeholders, mostly to meet individual or company goals. Projects are typically defined by a finite amount of work, and they have an end date. And a project typically ends when a feature is deployed. What that does is it actually leaves your customer at the very end of that process. So when the project has been delivered, when everything has been deployed, when the budget is exhausted and maybe the project team has disbanded, that's when your product hits the customer. And product thinking means to turn that around. Or as Marty Kagan put it, it forces you to fall in love with a problem and not with a solution, which is actually a lot harder because now you actually have to go out there. You have to talk to your customers to find out what the real problems are. And the answers will not only surprise you, they will also challenge your ways of thinking all the time, again and again. But if you do it, and if you put the customer first and you start thinking product, it also means that you start thinking in a much more continuous and long-term and evolving way. By putting the customers and their problems first, you increase your interaction and your understanding with them, and you're not so quick to formulate like solutions, but you're working a lot more on hypothesis, which leads to you actually moving in much smaller increments, but doing that a lot more quickly. It doesn't mean that stakeholders are suddenly then irrelevant. They're still relevant, but their role is changed more to provide context, and in the interaction with them, it's much more centered around sharing data. One example where this really comes to play is still even years after practicing this, we still get it sometimes that stakeholders come to us to the product development with like printouts from the website taken from their screens, and they've scribbled in their ideas what they want to change. And the first thing that actually comes to mind when you see those scribbles is, if you look at the data over the last couple of years, the environment has changed so much. The customers aren't using big screens anymore. 85% of our customers today are visiting us from mobile devices with very small screens. And getting that across, if you're solving problems for big screens, you're not solving problems for your customers. So first key factor for success around mindset is really to go towards consistently delivering significant new value to the business. So business is of course still in the center of this as well, but through a continuous product innovation. With that mindset, you also need a different look at the culture in your organization. And what we've done here is that typically there are 4 properties that make up a good product. First of all, it needs to be valuable to the customer. This is really around this: does it solve my problem? Does it provide value for the customer, but also for the business? It needs to be usable. That's the whole iPhone thing. I don't want to study something just to be able to use it. And lastly, it needs to be feasible, mainly or most of the time from a technology point of view. And those 3 working together is really what makes up a great product. And to deliver those products, it also requires you, and we've done that with our teams, to delegate responsibility in a full and holistic way, with all the consequences. Because if you do it that way, you delegate also a lot of the power along with the responsibility. Otherwise, your teams won't be able to move quick enough. And this is really all about moving quick enough, and also about testing, about learning, and about failure. And we have a saying that if you're not failing from time to time, you're not moving fast enough. And that is really also what we're trying to express with this quote. I've brought a few more, but this is also one of them which stuck to my mind. It's from Jess Humble, and it says, "If it hurts, do it more often," which sort of sounds contradictory. But the original context here is software development and continuous delivery. And it basically tells you that if a certain process causes pain or difficulty, it's important to work through that and not shy away from it. Because if you shy away from it and create processes that avoid that pain, those processes will eventually add up and create some sort of like a scar tissue around that pain, around that process, which never allows you to truly solve the problem. And as pain really translates to time, and time translates to cost, this cost starts to build up over time. So it's important for you, and we're practicing that a lot, to get exactly through that pain, and by exercising more quickly. And from a technology point of view as well, we see that, for example, we do regular load tests in production, not on a test environment, but really in production, so that we see that it works. We do regular disaster recovery days with all the teams, all involved, also very close to our live environment, because that's where our customers are, and that's what needs to work. Again, culture is all about putting the customer first, and then transforming the teams into like small groups of entrepreneurs to deliver that value that you need from them. All of those you need to sort of bake up into an organization as well. And they're building up on what we had before. The teams are responsible for all different aspects of the product. And typically, again, what literally tells you that is that at the center of all of three different concerns, there is that magical figure of all-knowing product owner. And then augmented by a cross-functional team. When we looked at what we needed, we found out that these people are really, really hard to find, especially if you need a lot of them, because when we started development of our current website, we started with 5 teams, but we realized that very quickly we would need to ramp up. So we tried to really transform a supposed weakness that we couldn't find all of these mini Steve Jobs type of guys into a strength, because we had great people who knew about technology, great people who knew about the business, and incredible people who could run projects and manage processes. So what we came up with is that we created sort of like virtual product owners by combining all of those 3 together. And if you talk to them from the outside, they act like one, but towards the team, they can really play out their strength from their individual disciplines. And that is one thing sometimes where you find concepts, but if they're not really right for your organization, you need the flexibility to sort of change them and make them, shape them in a way so that you can work with them. There is also the way to do that the other way around, for example, for your organization, where you have to adapt your organization to fit the concept. The concept in this case being domain-driven design. Again, centered around the customer's needs, as expressed in this case by the consumer journey that we have, which is very common for e-commerce models in general. The basic principle here is that every domain has a value contribution that you can then measure and express as KPIs. And if you align your organization with those problem domains of your customers, what you end up with is independent units, each with a clear purpose, and between them with minimal need for interaction. So your organization here is just as loosely coupled as your domains, and therefore able to, again, move at a very high pace. And at the same time, everyone, because this is modeled after your consumer journey, is again centered around your customer's needs. So we were always coming back to keeping the customer in the center of your thinking. Which is number 3, so organization for us means to set up your organization to keep business, customer, and technology, so all those 3 important areas aligned and at the center of all your decisions. And the 4th one, interestingly enough, even though I'm from the technical side, I put it last, because really technology is, for me always, and it should be for you as well, in this case, a means to an end. And the end is really to serve the customer and solve your customer's problem. It's nevertheless important because otherwise, well, we're running a digital business that wouldn't exist without it. Again, what we did and what tremendously helped, you don't need to, just because it's technology, reinvent everything. We built this shop from scratch up, which helped us a lot, but at the same time, we didn't build every little detail of it. We tried to copy as much as possible and again adapt it to our needs. A lot of those principles here around the Mach principles, I think that phrase wasn't coined until a lot later. When we started with it, we still called it typically a vertical design, which is the thing you see on the right. What you see on the right is actually our architecture on a very, very broad level. But the one thing that you should notice is, again, those verticals, they're called exactly the same like the organization and exactly the same as the different steps of the customer journey, because again, they're modeled after the customer journey, which gives them the same positive outcomes that we've already discussed before. Very loose coupling, very high independency, and therefore very great potential for speed. And the website in itself is just made up of a collection of micro front ends which get then bundled together. This also allows you that if you have a high sales event like Black Friday, where the traffic is evenly distributed just at a much higher level, it doesn't give you that many opportunities. But if, for example, you have a sales event like the PlayStation launch, where we said before, you have very high traffic on the order process, not so much on inspiration and search. You can scale, again, according to the needs of the business and the needs of that specific situation. If that works, you'll experience growth. And growth is really, really hard to deal with, especially, well, of course, it's great to have it, but it comes with a few downsides. And the downsides is, mainly in the space that I'm dealing with, it increases complexity. And not only complexity in the technical area, and developers are usually pretty good at expressing that and measuring it. They're using words like technical debt is increasing, but you also get it in the other dimensions. You get business complexity by more and more features getting added, and you get process complexity because your organization is growing. And it's really important to monitor that. From my experience, it's hard to find KPIs for that. At least it's hard to find KPIs that are not intrusive when it comes to the work of your teams. But still, maybe listening to anecdotes and listening to what your people are saying will enable you to pick up some early signs of complexity growing up. And that typically, the next step is that somebody will suggest to sweep in with an efficiency project. We need to increase efficiency and get that whole thing underway again. Pay attention to that, and again, try and employ a process that is looking for continuity, because it's always a balance between effectiveness, so building the right product, and efficiency, like building the product the right way. Every euro that you spend, you have to decide which side to spend it on. So to keep those two in balance and treat efficiency stories as part of your normal product development is crucial. And if you're in doubt, I would suggest to always lead towards the towards the effectiveness side, because that is where you're building the products that your customer loves. So balancing it out is really right. What you can do in a continuous way to keep the complexity in check is use platforms. This is typically something, and again, it's from a technical drawing where you sort of like collect things that are common across all of your technical domains and collect them into a common platform as a product. But you can also use that for processes as well. If you think of a platform like the things that you've learned, the things of where you've written down, okay, this works, this is how we all want to do it, this can already be the start of your very own platform, because it enables people not having to think about that all the time and making the same decisions again and again. And that pretty much completes the picture for me. Technology really as a last part, with a focus on balancing effectiveness and efficiency, and using technology as a tool, using it not as something that is self-fulfilling or something on its own, but as a tool to solve your business problems. I promised you they all work together, and they do, because this is all designed to work together. They're not isolated concepts, and that is the whole point of this. You need really to design your organization, and you need to design your processes to work together in a way, and you can do this. We did it at OTTO. It works for us. It works at a very large scale. It's certainly not the only way you could make this work, but it's the one that I wanted to share because it brought us to where we are. And as I've already used a lot of quotes, I want to give you one more, which is my favorite one, because it rang true so many times. It's the longest and it's the most complicated, and it's known, don't know who of you knows it, as Conway's Law. It dates back to the 1960s, and it basically says, right, very long sentence, organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of. It's a hideously long thing. I've shortened it down. It basically, for me, means if you have a crazy structure, no matter what you do, you'll end up with a crazy code base. And that is, yeah, the beginning of the end of all of it. Over to Michelle.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing the insights around Black Friday. I've just gathered some of the key takeaways that I have from this talk. First of all, and I think we've all heard that, it's not only about technology, right? In order to successfully master Black Friday, it also requires other key success factors. Or, as Daniel put it, crazy structure equals crazy code. Then also doing the right thing, and to use technology here to reduce complexity and operational overhead, as for example with AWS services. So the quote that we have here is, doing the wrong thing right is not nearly as good as doing the right thing wrong. And lastly, practice before Black Friday. If some processes are hurtful or cumbersome, practice them again to get them right. And with that, I would like to say thank you that you've been here. And maybe we still have like 2-3 minutes for questions.
Hello, myself Init. So my question to you would be, as you just said, right, that for the success of Black Friday, there are also other things which are essential, and over here we have not really talked about, for example, our assortment, our offers, our marketing. Just wondering that, during the time of Black Friday, is that something which changes for OTTO, and you have different direction in these 3 verticals, or you just stick with your principle for the whole year, how it works out for you?
Right. So if I got that correctly, it's if there are other aspects as well. Yes, of course, there are other aspects. To the customer, there's a lot of things that really ultimately lead to the ultimate thing of making that buying decision in the end. And assortment plays into that, awareness plays into that, the brand plays into that, a lot of things. I was really here focusing on the aspect that a lot of the things you can prepare for, and there are some which you cannot. Or better, your preparation is needs to be ingrained and baked into your organization as the whole. There are other aspects of the organization which really gear up to Black Friday. But again, if you have the chance to take the variance out of it, if you have the chance to make things not exceptional but normal, that is a pattern that I've learned over the years helps in many cases, not only in technology, not only in organization, but this whole thing of if it hurts, do it more often, try and exercise that across all of your domains of the business, not only the e-commerce technology side, of course.